So, what if you had a $1 billion idea? How would you actually prove it's the real deal before spending a fortune? The story of Rent the Runway isn't just about fashion. It's basically a masterclass in how to turn a brilliant fantasy into a real, breathing business using a powerful method called the lean startup. Okay, so picture this. You have an idea you are convinced is worth $1 billion. How on earth do you test it without sinking millions into a website, buying a ton of inventory, and all that marketing? This wasn't some hypothetical problem. This was the exact high-stakes mystery facing the founders of Rent the Runway way back in 2009. Every great company, right? It starts by solving a real problem. And for Rent the Runway, that problem had two very different sides. On one side, you've got the customer. We've all been there, staring into a closet packed with clothes, but feeling like you have absolutely nothing to wear for that big event. And on the other side, you've got these luxury designers who are completely missing out on a whole generation of potential customers. Their solution was simple. It was elegant, and honestly, it was revolutionary. They wanted to create the Netflix for fashion. The idea was, instead of buying a dress you might wear just once, you rent it. Suddenly, high fashion becomes this accessible service, not just some expensive product. A brilliant idea, for sure. But was it a brilliant business? But here's the thing about great ideas. At the end of the day, an idea is really just a collection of guesses. And before you build anything, you absolutely have to identify the biggest, riskiest assumptions. The ones that if you're wrong about them, will sink your entire company before it even gets off the ground. So what were their biggest guesses? Well, they basically boiled down to two massive questions. On the demand side, would women actually rent a used dress online without even trying it on first? And then on the supply side, would these huge luxury designers ever agree to this, or would they just see it as cheapening their precious brand? To answer these questions, the founders used a sort of detective toolkit, the lean startup method. The core idea is actually pretty simple. Instead of building the whole shebang at once, you turn your risky assumptions into questions, and then you run these super fast, super cheap experiments. They're called minimum viable products, or MVPs, to get real answers from the real world. All right, so their first experiment went right after that supply-side risk. Their hypothesis was bold, to say the least. They thought designers would be so excited they'd actually pay Rent the Runway to manage rentals for them. And the MVP to test this? No website, no code, just a conversation, a simple pitch. And the result? Whoa, it was a huge, dramatic failure. The designers were not just uninterested, they were terrified. They were worried that renting would cannibalize their sales and just destroy the exclusive luxury image they'd spent decades building. So the first big assumption was proven completely wrong. Now, what they did next is what's really fascinating. They didn't give up, they made a pivot, which is a crucial concept in the lean startup world. Realizing they couldn't count on the designers, they flipped the entire model. They would no longer be a B2B or business-to-business service. Instead, they'd become a B2C, business-to-consumer brand, buying the dresses themselves and renting them directly to women. This new model put the focus squarely on the customer, and that led to their second experiment. The hypothesis was simple. Women will pay to rent designer dresses. The MVP was a pop-up shop right on the Harvard campus. They just bought some dresses, put them on a rack, and let students try them on. It was a cheap but really powerful physical prototype. And the results this time? A huge success. The response was absolutely incredible. Women loved the idea, they happily paid the rental fee, and they even returned the dresses in great condition. This was the first piece of hard evidence that the core idea really had legs. But there was still a huge assumption lingering. I mean, think about it. An online business has no fitting room. Was trying the dress on a total deal breaker? Their third experiment was designed to find out exactly that. They ran the same pop-up shop, but this time at Yale, and with one critical change. Absolutely no try-ons allowed. And the result here was a total breakthrough. Demand was just as strong. It turned out that just seeing the beautiful dress in person was enough. The lack of a fitting room was not the deal breaker they had feared. This was a massive win for a future online-only model. So for the final test, they had to get even closer to what a real online experience would be like. The hypothesis: would women rent from just a photo? The MVP for this was brilliantly simple. Just a PDF catalog of dresses sent out via email, with orders taken over the phone. And you know what? It worked. They got a 5% rental rate from that simple PDF. Now, 5% might sound a little low, but to the founders, that was the magic number. It was all the proof they needed that the basic economics of the business could actually be profitable. I mean, just think about that journey for a second. 4 quick, cheap experiments. One failure led to a critical pivot. Then the next 3 systematically proved their biggest customer assumptions were correct. They had de-risked their entire idea, all without building a single web page. It was only after all of that that they finally launched their website. They were chasing the ultimate goal of this entire process, something called product market fit. It's really the holy grail for startups, that point where you have concrete proof of both strong customer demand and a viable path to making money. So, did Rent the Runway find it? Well, let's look at the evidence. For customer demand, the answer was a loud and clear yes. After launching, they saw explosive growth, and they quickly hit 150,000 registered users. This proved people were flocking to the idea. But was it profitable? Okay, let's look at the path to profitability. The economics were looking incredibly promising. They could buy a dress at a deep discount, around 45% of its retail price. Then they could rent it out for about 12.5% of the price. The math was simple. Rent a dress just 7 or 8 times and it was completely paid for. Every single rental after that was pure profit. And the data showed they were on track to hit those numbers, easy. So they solved the case. They proved their idea was the real deal. But in the startup world, solving one mystery just reveals the next one. They now faced a classic dilemma. Do we focus inward and fix our shaky internal operations, which were kind of a mess? Or do we ride this massive wave of demand and expand into new products and new markets? The Rent the Runway story is just such a powerful blueprint for turning a guess into a real company. And it leaves a crucial question for anyone out there with an idea, whether it's big or small. What is the absolute smallest, fastest experiment you could run to find out if your idea is truly real?